You know, there are some people that are just looking for conflict. But a lot of conflict does not end up the way you think it's going to end up. It's not going to end up that way. Don't be so quick to jump out there. Can I tell you, it is better to deal with things at a lower level than to get them at a high level too quick. One of the reasons we keep appealing to courts, and the Supreme Court, and the state court, Supreme Court, there is a judicial process with our nation that says if you don't like the answer, then you can keep appealing. But ultimately, they don't start you at the Supreme Court for every decision going on. It starts at a lower thing. And most things don't even get to court because it's settled between people. There's still people that are willing to try to settle out of court, settle out of disputes. And part of that, there's wisdom to it. Hasty defense may bring unexpected results. Let's go to the next one. Discretion, because this is all part of it. It says, containing a matter to necessary parties is always wisdom. You need to contain. There is a wisdom principle in containing things. We don't need to get everybody involved when it doesn't involve everybody. I've always tried to lead this way. That whatever's necessary to work through a problem or to solve a problem is what's necessary to be told. But not everybody needs to be brought into a problem that's not everybody's problem. It's so important that we understand the wisdom of containing things. And so it says, why let it get to the courts if you can do it before you get to the courts? Why go there? Paul said it this way in the New Testament. He says, why are brothers that should be able to figure this out going to an ungodly judge to determine a dispute between brothers, Christian brothers? That's a bad reproach to the church. It's a mar in the church, but it's also irrational. You guys are believers, you're Christians. You should be able to work it out. We didn't need an ungodly judge deciding a Christian dispute. Amen? The law of containing. We need to contain matters to necessary parties. It's so important that if this person is upset with that person, that we don't get 4 other people involved. Right. Here's what happens. If Sean gets upset at Missy, then we need Sean and Missy to work this out and figure it out. Because if Missy says, or Sean says, I'm so upset at Missy, I'm going to go get Brian, I'm going to get Dana, I'm going to go get Rick, and I'm going to tell them what Missy did to me. And then Sean comes back to Missy. Now you've got people that aren't part of the equation, aren't part of the solution, and aren't part of the problem, now becoming a bigger problem. And ultimately, Sean may say, okay, we can get it resolved, but now 4 other people have an opinion about Missy that shouldn't have, and may have even picked an offense for Sean, and now you've got multiple problems with the situation. Now here's the problem. I've said this before, but I need us to understand it. If Missy does something to Sean, Sean is the only person in that scenario that has grace to deal with it. Right. Anything that happens to me, I have grace to handle. Because God says that His grace is sufficient for that. But who doesn't have grace is Rick, Brian, anybody else part of the situation. Because God doesn't promise them the grace to handle it. Right. He promises the person that's offended to handle it. Yeah. But here's what happens. Rick comes over and says, I don't believe that's right, man. That should not happen. Sean says, you know, I'm just going to forgive her. Rick says, well, I'm having a hard time forgiving her. Because he don't have the grace to deal with the circumstance because he wasn't the one that got offended. Yeah. Right. You see what happens when we stay away from containing things and we start spreading things. And we start pulling people in that don't fit the equation.
That's good.
And so he says, don't jump to the courts. Be discretionary. Keep it contained. Look at verse 9. Debate your case with your neighbor and do not disclose the secret to another. That's pretty straight up. Don't take the secret. Isn't that back to verse 1? Concealing a matter. Don't take that secret to somebody else. Because more often than not, it's going to blow up on you. It's going to backfire. Discretion. Trust comes through confidentiality. And when we blow it in big ways. And it hurts the people, and it hurts the situation, and it hurts your credibility. Number 7, final thing, influence. Reasoning and agreeing help promote influence and impact. Look at verse 10. Lest he who hears it expose your shame and your reputation be ruined. Here's the problem. Confidentiality, competency, and handling things gets blown out when we don't learn to contain things. And it changes our level of influence and what we can influence and do with others. Here's the problem. When we put things in the wrong people's hands and we handle things with the wrong ways and inappropriately, we kill the influence that we would have. And it says that your reputation is ruined. Now we're going to get into next week talking about how important your name is and what it is. And there's different things that we can do to help that. But ultimately, way more than what you say is what that is building it. And whether you're trustworthy or whether you can be counted on, whether you can be confidential, whether you can be confident, whether you can contain. It's very important to do that. We don't typically tell people things that can't contain things. We don't like to tell secrets to people that spread secrets. It gets back to the decoy thing. You give them a little bit of information to see how they handle it before you give more information. Today, and I'm done, but today, it seems like a lot of these tips, even though there's 7 different issues, they all come into one. There is so much to be said about handling things properly. And how many of you know all of that can be brought down into one word, wisdom? We need wisdom. I'm going to ask for everybody to stand.